Okay, so today we're going to do a shoe battle, and this is another battle of the Adelaides. But what I wanted to do today was I wanted to look at three different brands for shoe battle that are from the UK versus three brands that are manufactured in Spain. So as we look from left to right here, and this is my left, so it may be flipped when recording, I apologize for that, but we have Crockett and Jones, we've GAZIANO and Girling, we have George Cleverly on the one side from the UK, then we have TLB Mallorca, we have Carmina, and we have J Fitzpatrick. So as we look at the six different brands, we're going to look at a couple of different things first, just to have the playing field as level as possible. Okay, so from a price standpoint, we're looking at about $625. These run at about 900 pounds, so figure 100 or $1,010 or $1,050. These run about $750. These run right around $400. $475 with a 30% addition if they're custom, and these run about $425. So just to kind of keep it real, want to make sure that we're talking about this with an eye toward what it would cost to actually buy them. Now, you'll see that as Adelaides go, one of the most prominent features, or in my mind, the most prominent feature of an Adelaide shoe is the U throat. So you have this U right here, and you can see that it's slightly different on each shoe. And so one of the things that I want to do is look at how long or how wide is that U. Okay, so here we have, this is about 8.5 millimeters. Here we're looking at about 6. Here we're looking at about 8, maybe 6.5. Here we're at about 7, and then here, and my light is in the way, also at about 7. So a little bit different there in the measurements. Now let's look at the stitch density. Okay, so if I look at an inch, most people do it as stitches per inch. Okay, so I'm looking at 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 stitches per inch on the upper. So that's 16. One, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 16 here. If they're all 16, I'm going to be really embarrassed. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10, 11, 12, 13, 14, 15, 20. Alright, so that's a little bit higher stitch density. Here, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's going to be 20. It's also 20. And honestly, it's easier to look at the holes than it is at the actual thread. But 1, 2, 3, also 20. So between 16 and 20 stitches per inch on the uppers. Now, let's look at the soles. This is another common one that we do. So 1, 2, 3, 4. That's 8 per inch. And do this one here. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's 9 per inch on the Carmina, so a little bit more on the Carmina. On the TLB, it's very hard to see the stitch lines here. They're very, very hidden in the fudging. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9. I'm going to look here. Cleverly is 8. GAZIANO and Girling is 9. And the Crockett and Jones, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That's also, you know, I'm not seeing it very clearly there. Here, I'm gonna stitches are so close together on these Crockett and Jones, I can't barely see them. So I'm gonna say I can't tell. I don't want to lie. Oh, I can look at the bottom on these. I can't do that on the others. So here we've got 1, 2, 3, 4. Oh, that's 8. Okay. So a little bit of a comparison there as well. Now, when you look at the soles, the only shoe out of here that has the stitches on the outsole is going to be the Crockett and Jones. All of the others have that blind stitch, so it's completely covered. So you're not seeing any of the stitching on the bottom of the sole. Okay. Now, let's take a look at the waist. This is an area that I always like to look at. I'm going to do this in metric, just because it's small, and I want to be able to get a better read on it. So here, at the narrowest part of the waist, we're at, hold on a second, let me refocus it. Sorry. So we're right about, well, get the measurement right. So 6 3/4, almost 7 centimeters. Okay. Now we'll look here, and I have a bevel on this, so it's hard to do. But here I'm at 6 1/2. Here I'm at 5 1/2. And here I'm almost at 5. Let me just be really careful to do that justice. Yeah, just 5 1/4 maybe. Maybe less than 1/4. The Carmina, 6 1/2. And J Fitzpatrick, 6 1/2. So another interesting measurement there as we continue to look at these. So as we continue to look at the shoes, now we've looked at stitch density, we've looked at overall styling. One of the things that when I think of styling, I like the rise on the toe. Okay, so what do I mean by that? So let's take a look at this pair here. Okay. And on this particular shoe, I'm a fan of the way it rises like this and like this before it curves over. Now that is obviously a stylistic choice, but I also like the sweeping lines on the way it tends to go all the way back as well. Now it doesn't have that sharp rise, it gets a little bit more rounded as it goes throughout the shoe. So this is the Crockett and Jones, has a very interesting look to it as you go back. Now as we take a look at some of the others, the GAZIANO and Girling, again just trying to keep the autofocus up with us here, I feel like that has a longer line, but they're not as sharp. So right here, it's not as sharp on the rise, and then as it gets back to the further part of the shoe, I feel like it has more of a rise here, and it's just a little bit sleeker overall. So if you're looking at the side of the shoe comparatively, it's just a little bit sleeker. But I'm going to be honest with myself here, and I'm going to say that that's pretty darn nominal. So just to be clear. Okay. Now the Cleverly, I feel like it's a little narrower in the front, with a sharper rise than the GAZIANO and Girling. I'm going to kill my camera here because it just seems to take forever to be able to focus. So that is to me, that's a better rise here, and more of a sharpness on the toe. So again, very much a stylistic observation, not something that I would say is indicative of quality. It's just simply the design. And I don't mind the design of the G&G. I find that it's very different and additive to my collection because it's not the same. The TLB has very sharp rise, okay, and continues that rise. This line kind of goes all the way across the shoe here, and I find that to be very, very pleasing to the eye. Okay, and it wraps around really well. You can see I did some polish on the heels, which makes it nice as well. Now, the Carmina, this is the Simpson last, does not have that sharp rise, and it has more of a roundness toward the top here than the GAZIANO and Girling. So if you look at them side by side, you can see this one goes a little bit higher, has a little bit more toe room. The overall shape is very similar, although the G&G is more square. Now this rise here does go back into the shoe quite a bit, and wraps around nicely as well. And then lastly, we have the J Fitzpatrick, and you can see it has a little bit of a rise as well. And you know, the shape of the last, and which is causing those rises, is more important on a hole cut than it is going to be on these. But you'll see here there's more volume in the shoe here than there is here. Okay, it's very slight, but you can see the difference, and that is why it doesn't crease as much, because these crease a lot because there's more room for my foot. So I'll record another video on some of the things that I do in order to take care of the room for my foot on certain shoes, but just an observation there to be sure. Now lastly, I'm going to talk about the cut of the clicking. And the clicking, if you know anything about shoemaking, when they actually cut the leather, the way that they cut the leather determines a lot on the quality of the shoes. And I've heard Tony Gaziano talk about how important that is, and so I want to point out some differences in the brands here. So first off, let's look at the heels. You can see this is a pretty standard thing that Crockett and Jones, they have two different heel caps, is what I call them, and they wrap around the shoe, but there's a very noticeable seam here, and then they have the piece, the flap that goes across the side, which kind of makes it a continuous for your foot, right? So, and I'm going to skip the G&G for now, but let's take a look. G&G, exactly the same. Exactly the same, and that's not really so surprising because they're probably made in the same factory. Now you get into the TLB, and this is one piece of leather now, it's not two. That is a very big difference, and they do it because they create the seam here, which allows it to tuck in as they go. So I think that that's an interesting difference. Now, Carmina, same. So TLB and Carmina both have the little seam, but they still use one piece of leather. You look at J Fitzpatrick, and it's the same exact thing. Okay, so that's interesting. So one piece of leather, but they have that seam, and that seam can be, you know, interesting. And now when we look at the G&G though, take a look at this. It is one piece of leather, and there's no seam. Now they do that because they cut the leather to go around the heel, okay? And their heel is very much cut in order to work with this. Now, one of the things that we didn't do, which I think is probably worth looking at, is how wide are these heels? Now you can see that the heel is tapered a little bit in from, so it's wide and it goes a little narrow. So if we look at the width of the heel, right? This is 7 centimeters. So let's take a look and compare that to the others, because these are all 270 welts. They're not big. So this one is also 7, and it gets narrower as it gets down, so it's tapered in that direction too. And just to show that, here it's 7 here, and it's 6.5 down here. So that's as well as tapered. Here, 6.5 at the wide, and down to 6 So this is quite a bit more tapered, or quite a bit narrower. Okay, 7 on the TLB, and 6.5. Here, 7.25, down to almost 6 3/4 on the Carmina. And then we have 7.5, and kind of stays 7.5. So much less taper on the J Fitzpatrick, which is not surprising. It's a less expensive shoe. So as we look at them, that is a functional difference. Now the taper on the heel from the width down to the heel, which we can see here, kind of this little kind of reverse trapezoid or shape. Let's take a look at how that looks on the others. Crockett and Jones, I'm no expert. I think that that's pretty flat though, pretty straight. I don't think that that's as tapered. On the George Cleverly, that looks quite tapered, doesn't it? And then we're going to look here at the TLB. That looks pretty straight up and down, so less of a taper there. Now this is going to feel different on the foot, right? This is the Carmina. If that's tapered, it's tapered very, very slightly. I'm going to say that that's straight. And I would be surprised if this isn't straight, but that's straight as well. So again, that gives us a little bit of a difference in the view as we look at these shoes and we think about how they're different. Just a small difference there. So this is Wisconsin Shoe Guy. I'm going to call it a shoe battle over now. So if I had to rank them, you know, I still think the TLB Mallorca has a narrower waist. I would say that the Cleverly has superior construction along with the G&G. The G&G, obviously, they take a lot more time and care with this. I'd love to talk about the comfort of the leather. The comfort of the leather on all of these is so high. It's very difficult for me to be able to talk about that. These the Carminas, I actually had a kid leather lining on it, which is super, super thin and super soft. So it's very difficult to compare. But I'm going to say that they're all extremely comfortable. I'm going to do a video where I'm wearing these shoes so that you'll be able to see the difference there. But for now, I'm going to say that from a leather quality and a leather feel, they all feel fantastic, so they're equal. So thanks for watching. Let me know your thoughts and let me know who you'd pick as the winner. This is Wisconsin Shoe Guy, and I'm out.